been given access to receive messages of clarity, guidance, and love. As channeler, psychotherapist, and author, Noemi Grace has an intimate dialogue with the divine on your behalf. Lisa Berry, creator of the show Light on Living, will be co-hosting as live callers ask their burning question on self-love, self-healing, deepening relationships, areas of struggle, and next steps. By simply listening in, you're receiving wisdom that will lead to sacred stability from every channeled message that Noemi delivers. Join us now as we give you access to angels and grace. Yippee! Access! We've been given it. I love it. Hello, Noemi Grace.
Hello, Lisa Berry. Always a pleasure. Oh, it's just such a great way for me on the weeks that we're on to start the week. Before I work with any clients, before I take care of any business, it's time. It's the connecting time, the sweet time.
It is. I'm glad that you said that. I was just making a cup of tea before we went on. I like to have my tea as we share with our lovely listeners here. And I thought, I'm going to tell Noemi right on air how much I really look forward to coming and sharing this time with people. Because I had a little chat with my best friend earlier today, and I said, I'm really lucky because my world is filled with people who are here to support and help and really help you face scary things, challenging things, things like even in the intro it said about what things we're struggling with or even suffering from. And I thought, I just want to invite everybody all the time to come listen to us and share this time because there's always a piece. I don't want to say information, but it's access. It's access, Noemi. There's always a little access door, a little access panel. We're sneaking in.
Access panel. and access is one of your favorite words. It was definitely a word you wanted to use. Yes. So yeah, it is it's a gift to be here and to share. And I wish everybody in the world could know that we're doing this, and then if it was an alignment that they could decide, but we'll get there at some point, maybe.
Yes, exactly. And just for all the listeners here, we have been doing this series, Living Beyond Wounds. And, I never would have thought, almost a year ago when we started everything, that, we'd be talking about wounds. It's always such a yucky, scary, ouchy, ugly, oh, I'm not looking, I'm not touching, that sounds painful word. But when we can embrace it, and that's actually something that you had written in the show description, it's about, how can we embrace and have the courage to grow beyond not just the wound, but the comfort zone and after like that, I don't want to look, but okay, I need to. So, Noemi, we are continuing the series, and today is all about accommodating the wound. So tell me what that means to you.
Well, and actually it's about how to stop accommodating the wound, right?
Sorry. Yes. Yes, thank you for that. Yes.
We know how to accommodate the wound. It's kind of like if you hurt your knee on one knee and you start to lean more heavily on the other leg, you're accommodating that. And over time, I had a crown in my mouth, and sometimes I jump in the middle of a sentence. So
that's okay. That makes sense.
I had a crown. When I got my first crown, I started to chew on the other side exclusively. And I realized a year after when I had the crown, I'm still only chewing on one side. I had accommodated that wound, and it became unconscious, except that my jaw started to hurt on that side. And I'm like, why is it hurting? And I was like, oh, because I'm only chewing on that one side. And so I was creating this imbalance. And so, we go through life with wounds. It's part of being human, but we learn to change our approach to life based on how severe the wound is.
That was so well said. Our approach. And I love that you actually realize it took a year. Maybe it sometimes takes people 10 years. Maybe it's only a couple days. You're like, hey, what am I doing here? But it's our approach. And sometimes our wounds are with others. Sometimes we're with ourselves. Sometimes, they're because of an event that happened. But it's how we approach things in life. So would it be... Did you, how did you notice? What was the thing that made you realize, do you remember, that you were chewing on one side?
my jaw was hurting on that side. It was overworking my jaw. And I used to chew a lot of gum back then. I don't know why I was into that, but, so I'm chewing a lot of gum on one side all day long. And so then it was like I started to have this jaw issue. And it took a bit, I went to the dentist and I went to this other specialist, and then somebody asked me a question, and I was like, oh yeah, I was chewing that side because of the crown. I'm like, oh. And so I started to chew on both sides, and the crown could handle it, but it was causing me, right? So that wound, of needing to have that crown,
Protection.
was painful. The protection caused me to chew on the other side, which created another wound, because now they were saying I was having TMJ. So,
oof, yes. Oh,
yeah.
Yes, that's a bad one. And it's so interesting because the crown itself was supposed to be the fix. Is that correct? Like you get the crown so that you can chew on it. And a lot of us realize that. We realize we think we've done what needs to be done. We've healed it. We've put the support in there, the Band-Aid, the thing in place. But then it does take a conscious act to fix something. There are some things in my lives like I'm trying to think, avoiding, like that's what you're saying, avoiding something. And we think, oh, that caused me pain. I received a wound from that. There was an injury, trauma. And then you just, even though you think, oh, no, I've healed it, I'm good. But then you're like, wait a second, what do I do in my life around this that still has like a thread woven over it? And I have to read these questions. You put... We've shared in the show description, you guys, if you were able to read that. We love this. We love doing the show descriptions because they're kind of like a story base, and we were having fun with it. But we asked the questions. What adjustments and accommodations have we been hanging on to? How can we recover what we lost through becoming wounded? I'm just naming these now because we're going to go through these through the show. How can we restore the vitality and joy? Like, hey, you must have been so excited to chew on the other side of your mouth, right? It's like, oh, look at this. Oh, it feels good.
I'm not sure that was vitality and joy with that physical wound, but
There you go.
but it felt good not to have the pain of the TMJ by chewing on both sides.
Yes. And then, there's a couple to here. How can we embrace the courage to grow past that we talked about? And how can we finally stop accommodating, that's the thing, the wound, and start living more fully? And I know that there's been things where I've had pain or wounds and haven't been able to walk properly. And then finally, when I get to take a full stride, it feels like, oh, I know what it is. Movement, lack of stagnation, circulation has been restored. And to me, that's vitality, is restoring, like allowing the flow to go back in there, circulate.
Yeah. That's a great description of it. And so we don't know that we're accommodating the wound, especially when it's healed. I had this crown in my mouth, and my mouth was fine, but I was still accommodating that. When you put the temporary crown and you're not supposed to chew on it, I was still acting as if I had the Band-Aid and not the fix.
Yes. Ooh, acting as if you still have the Band-Aid and not the fix. That's a good one. Because why would it be hard for us sometimes to acknowledge that we have had we're afraid? Why is it that's a question right now. We can do that channel later. Is that, why does the fear remain that we could be hurt if we full on know that we've got the fix? We've got the access. Why can't we step into it?
Yeah. I mean, just from a psychological perspective, it's that subconscious. Most people know the story of Pavlov's dogs, how he trained his dogs to salivate on hearing a doorbell because he was giving them meat. When they heard the doorbell, then he removes the meat, and the doorbell rings, and they're still salivating. So we remove the temporary and put on the permanent, and we're still chewing on the other side.
Exactly. And we do this subconsciously too. I read something that was really interesting called Sham Feeding, and we can actually even trick our bodies and fake eat, and our body will still go through the digestion process inside, even though there's no food been given. So I love that's neat that you brought that up. And it's interesting that we do that because in the way of our bodies, our subconscious bodies, you might think, no, I've got this. I'm going to consciously chew. I'm going to consciously take a full stride. But then all of a sudden we can subconsciously go back. And do we have to have a conversation with our souls? And do you think there's a healing process to not accommodate the wound?
Yes. We certainly need an awareness shift, right? We need to understand that we're accommodating the wound, and then to find out perhaps it's only been partially healed. So, right, suppose that the crown was there, but even when I chewed on it, it was still sensitive. Then I would have a partial fix and continue to accommodate that. So it really does become something our subconscious mind does. And so the more conscious that we are, the more we're aware of what we're doing subconsciously. And so being able to be conscious enough to say, oh, I'm still chewing on the other side. I mean, if you're chewing and you're on social media and you're doing this and that, you're not even necessarily aware how your mouth is operating. And this was many years ago before social media, but still I wasn't aware that I was chewing for a whole year until somebody asked me a question. One of the doctors asked me a question. I had no awareness that I'm chewing only on one side.
Yes.
And so what else don't we have awareness? Yeah. It just came to me. I hadn't thought of that in a long time, but so yeah. So should I do the reading?
Yes, I was going to say you had previously channeled and had a little conversation with Source, and I love when you get to share these because it really sets a beautiful stage for the remaining of the show. They give a lot, so let's hear this.
Yeah, so what I do is I take the time before the show to get a communication with the divine to find out what their thoughts are and where we start. So this is the starting point. It's a little bit. It's sweet and it's maybe a little longer than usual, but I will read until I'm told to stop. And so this is what the divine said 2 days ago. Every wound brings with it the potential for healing. You must recognize this. Seek the healing within the wound first before looking outside for healing. You must not fear the wound. The wound can never re-injure you when you see it with eyes of love. The wound needs recognition, and it also needs love. Love the wound. It is telling you something important about yourself. Put your eyes to the wound by seeing it from love. How does that transform the landscape of the wound? Put your ear to the wound like you would put your ear to a conch shell, which sounds like the ocean. And in that listening, the shell tells you the story of its life in the ocean. In a deep listening, you can hear what the wound tells you also about yourself and your life. The wound speaks to your resilience. You did survive it after all. It also tells you what you were missing, what you need to cultivate in order to heal it. In our love is the antidote to the fear that many of you carry for the wound. The wound does not have the power to re-injure you, although clearly things in your environment and in your mind do. Be with the wound in love. See the vulnerability that exists under the wound. Embrace the vulnerability and the wound. Say to the wound, I know you are here to remind me to protect myself from getting hurt again, and I accept that. But I am healing myself and healing you through acceptance, compassion, and love. This may sound too simple, but compassion is the simplest thing. It is pure love directed at you and the wound. Yet it is the most difficult thing for many of you. Stop fighting the wound. Stop resisting the wound. Embrace it with compassion. Let go of all the walls and fortifications you have built against it. The wound is not your enemy. Recognize it as the ally that it is. After all, it's trying to protect you. Then gently and lovingly dismantle the wound through releasing your fear and taking down your fortifications. The wound is there for protection, yet it limits you. Recognize both the safety of the wounds and the limitations it brings, and stop resisting it. Be willing to sit with it, to be with it. And then you will see how it has spread tentacles into much of your life through self-protecting, hiding, loss of your voice and power, projecting an image into the world that is not you. And it has done all of these things in the name of protection. And when you no longer need its protection, it is safe to remove those tentacles. And then there's a description of how to do that, which was really sweet. So this will be in my next book, or perhaps a book that Lisa and I might write. But the description about it was about learning how to exercise your voice. So I will read a little bit more, and then we'll go to commercial. So they're saying you've adopted some just-in-case behaviors. You may keep silent in case someone will hurt you if you speak up. Start to speak up with the safe people in the safe situations. Learn to exercise your voice and grow your ability to speak your truth in a non-attacking way. Keep exercising your voice, and one day you will find yourself singing aloud with vibrancy and power. You will have found your voice. You have recovered the power of your voice without putting yourself at risk for re-injury. And then there's more loveliness, but I think that feels like a good place to stop.
Aw. You know what's funny? Just before you had read about the voice, I had taken the note like, oh, loss of your voice. Let's talk about that, because a lot of people right now are feeling that they are either have lost their voice, are not allowed to use their voice, or afraid to use their voice. So we're off to commercial breaks, everyone. But when we come back on Access to Angels and Grace, I think we're going to have a little chat about the voice and the wound. How's that?
Okay. Sounds awesome.
We'll see you in a moment, everybody, with Noemi Grace and Lisa Berry.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
The universe is eager to help you and give you clarity. You only need to be willing to ask your burning question and listen to the answer Source wants you to have. As a channeler of divine messages, I take your questions directly to the divine and hear what Source is longing to tell you. I'm Noemi Grace, and my co-host Lisa Berry and I welcome you to join us as a listener or caller on Access to Angels and Grace, 2 Wednesdays a month. Call in, ask your most burning questions, hear the divine's exact words giving you guidance and clarity. Access to Angels and Grace, where messages of joy await you.
Hi, this is David Strickle. I'm excited to share my brand new show, The Stream of David Live, right here on OMTimes Radio. Each week I'll have exciting guests, and I'll channel the eternal wisdom of the stream, a group of non-physical entities whose teachings have transformed lives all over the world. So join us for an uplifting hour each Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. That's The Stream of David Live right here on OMTimes Radio.
These are the sounds of a dinner that almost didn't happen. A dinner now served, thanks to people like you. Due to COVID-19, 17 million more Americans may face hunger. Feeding America is helping our neighbors in need. And if you're able, you can too. Donations are being accepted at feedingamerica.org/coronavirus. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Access to Angels and Grace. We have Noemi Grace here and myself, Lisa Berry. And, Noemi, you know what's really neat as we go through this Living Beyond Wounds series, we've just been finding nooks and crannies and crevices all around the wound that I would never have imagined. and here we land with... our voice. And actually, I kind of wrote down here, use your voice, not your vice. But you know,
You and I both love language.
Yes, we do. And that's the thing is we all do love language. And so there's a language that the wound, we end up speaking because of a wound. And there's a language that we actually can sometimes turn our backs on and accommodate for or ignore. And when we lose our voice around the wound, what I was thinking that kind of might look like is it's a disempowering place that we can feel like I can no longer do something because I'm wounded. I've lost my status, quote unquote, of my power. That's how I was feeling. Is that where you kind of see that happening?
Well, that's interesting that you're saying that, because that sort of implies a level of awareness. So I think we go about with this accommodating, and we start limping through life, as we said in the show description, that we start to accommodate and we're not necessarily aware. We're not aware that we're doing what we're doing. It becomes habit. And so whatever we're doing habitually in an unconscious way, Abraham calls that living by default, is usually not the most supportive thing for us.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry, I was just, when you said limping, this is such a weird image because I've been watching the series, the Sherlock Holmes series on Netflix. I think it's Netflix or whatever, Apple TV, something. Anyways, it's the Sherlock ones. In the beginning, John he walks with a limp and he has a cane. And you just said about, it was supporting you. And all of a sudden, he had to jump to the rescue and do something. And he forgot. He forgot he had the wound. And he tossed the cane, and he I hope I didn't ruin that for anybody. But it was at the very beginning. So, and it was really neat because sometimes we end up using, let's call it a crutch or a cane, and we rely on these we rely on other people and tools and other things, and sometimes they are helpful, but sometimes we have to have that awareness, like, question it. Do we still need that crutch? Actually, that might be a question we could have you channel and ask the divine on. How do we know when we truly need the Band-Aid, the crutch, the cane, the support, the accessory?
Say that again. How do we know when?
How do we, when we do truly still need? When we still need assistance and to accommodate? How do we know when, it's still yes, we do need to accommodate. This is important. Or how do we know when it's truly time that it's not in our best interest? We're not being empowered any longer by these helpful things that once did assist us.
I think that latter question is the really important one, because how do we know when we no longer need this?
Yeah. And
how do we know if we're okay to not use it?
Yes.
It may still feel uncomfortable. Someone post-surgery who maybe is using the crutch or the cane, maybe they're at a point where they can go without it. It may feel a little bit, shaky, but that's what their next step is. And in that shakiness, they redevelop the strength in their muscles and they're able to then go without it. So.
Oh, wait, Noemi. Stepping out of the comfort zone. Okay. Well, stepping out of the comfort zone, you are shaky. And we talk about that, like stepping out of that comfort zone, breaking free. And it is shaky. You're not going to generally, well, sometimes you might break out and go, look at me. I'm walking, I'm chewing. It's
on both sides. And,
yes. But it is shaky.
Well, yeah. And I prefer to look at the comfort zone as something we grow, like the hermit crab grows into a new shell. Yes. Because as soon as we get out of the comfort zone, that's scary. Because it's like, to me, the comfort zone is like that shell of the crab. And so we're going to go outside of the shell. When the crab needs a new shell, it is like, that's its main focus. I read something fascinating about the crab in the shell recently. Oh. And it's its main focus. It is going through the beach, looking for the right shell. Not too big, not too small. It needs that Goldilocks shell. And so... Let's
see what the universe has.
Okay, so we are going to ask about how do we know when we no longer need to accommodate the wound, or when it is safe to start
Yes.
letting go of the accommodations. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay. So if you're listening for the first time, I just take a couple seconds to get deeper with a connection with Source, and then I'll greet them and turn it over to them. So a few seconds of silence. Hello, Divine. Such a really great question here. I'm not sure I can even repeat it again, but you heard it, as you always hear us. And so whatever help you can give us so that we can let go of these accommodations, we can recognize that we're accommodating and that it's safe, even if it is a little shaky, that it's safe to let go. And we are pleased with this question because it is important for you to recognize that you have accommodated. And the accommodation at first is necessary. It is protective to put pressure on an injured part of the body. Will be to re-injure it, to cause the injury to accelerate. And so to not exacerbate that injury, yes, you do accommodate. You do switch to the other side of the body. You walk softly, and you are very aware of the need to accommodate. What happens is this becomes a habit. This becomes, as Noemi Grace said, your default. And so then you are no longer aware that you're accommodating. And the wound can heal. So we'll start with the physical wound. The physical wound will heal, and you will continue to overcompensate for it, for a wound that is no longer there, a wound that is no longer present in the way that it was. There may be some scarring, there may be some tenderness, but the wound is not at that level where it used to be. And so one of the keys to living a full life and a fulfilling life is to be conscious, is to be aware. And especially with wounds, this is so important. Recognize that you are overcompensating, that you are accommodating, that you are still acting as if the wound is central, organizing principle of your life. You must take care to not re-injure the wound. And so you are still tied to the wound. You're tied to the past. You are not free of it because subconsciously you're dragging it around like that ball and chain. To free yourself, you must first become aware. And how do you know when it is time? How do you know? Stop. Move into your heart. And if you need help with that, we're always here. Say Divine, Source, God, Angel, Allah, whatever name you want to call us, Jehovah, it doesn't matter. We respond to all of it. And you can not even call. You can simply say, help me. Help me. Do I need to do this? And so actually, as you are healing, recognize that you're healing. Instead of recognizing that you're wounded, recognize you are healing the wound. I am healing. I am healing that wound. And so as you're healing, start to bring awareness to, how am I doing? Can I be without this accommodation? Can I leave the crutch at home? Can I walk with the cane? Can I walk a short distance without the cane? And this is, of course, metaphoric. We're talking about the accommodations that you have made emotionally and mentally, and the walls that you've put up. Those are big accommodations for you emotionally and mentally. Putting up those walls. Is it safe for me to start to pull them down? Do they need to be 20 feet high? Can you take them down? Ask yourself, can I take them down? What can I do? How can I act more in alignment with the freeing and the healing that has already occurred? Healing is occurring through your intention to heal. And you are created as beings that can self-heal. Many of you have lost that ability, but you can self-heal. And that ability is there. And this self-healing is not only on the physical plane, it is psychologically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all can be healed. But yet, as on the physical plane, you might need surgery as a path to healing, or physical therapy, or some help from someone else. The same is true for everything else. Maybe a spiritual counselor, or a spiritual healer, or a psychotherapist, whatever feels to be the best alignment for you. So start to be aware. I am on the path. I am on the road to healing. I am healing myself with the help. And so start to, as you're going through life, check in. What healing have I received? What healing do I have? What accommodations do I no longer need? What is that next step of courage that you can take to free yourself some more? To leave the cane, metaphorically, in the car, to walk to the front of the door. What is that next step? Be aware that you are always healing. Change your awareness, shift it from being always wounded to always healing, and check in with yourself. Sit in a still place. Recognize also the accommodations you've made, the walls you have erected around your wounds. They are ensconced in walls, protected, so that the wound is safe. The wound's safety is limitation for you. Recognize that. Seek to become more the unlimited person that you are. You are unlimited beings who do not know that that is who you are. And so start with awareness, and start with looking within, and start with the courage, and ask us for help if you feel you have no courage. And start with the courage to take down some of these walls that you have erected in your life to protect the wound, because they're limiting you, and you are too big to be limited. And once you believe that, you can change anything in your life. We are complete in this moment, yet ever expanding. Namaste.
That was very empowering.
Always is.
The highlight of that one just... Oh, good. Yes, we do have moments before commercial. The biggest highlight I hope people heard there, which I love, was you are on the path of healing. You're not on the path of wounded and illness and sickness. Once the awareness is there, you literally are on the path of healing, and to have that courage and ask for help, to have the courage to recognize that and see that.
Yeah, that shift from I'm wounded to I'm healing. That every wound, and in the reading that I said here in the reading that I read earlier, it says every wound brings with it the potential for healing. And so recognizing, okay, yeah, I've been wounded. That was then. Now I'm healing. And then to start to see what can I let go of now? Right? Because we're overcompensating. We've had those walls. Can you pull them down a bit? It's not necessarily, okay, no more walls, but start pulling them down. Start recognizing. I liked how it said the walls are protective for the wound, but limiting for you.
Yes, I like that one too. I'm going to just grab that, protective and limiting. What I've been do is we use examples of physical wounds, because they're, we can all see them and touch them, feel them, all those good things. But there's a lot of psychological wounds, and even to the, I like to bring into this conversation that people are experiencing wounds as in limitations. And I love that came up, because somebody might be going through something. Maybe somebody right now is experiencing having to face, I say face in a good way, mind you, moving back in with their family, their parents, their aging parents. Maybe their parents need help. Maybe they need help. And a wound can feel like, gosh, I feel like I'm wounded as is I'm not good enough to do it on my own, or I'm being forced to live in prison with my family again. There's like what am I giving up? What do I have to give up, and what do I must protect if this happens? Like changing where we live, changing our jobs and careers if they, lost their job. And these are wounds. It doesn't have to be a flesh wound, like a
No.
It's
The biggest wounds are those that aren't flesh, right? The emotional wounds. The traumas, every trauma that we've experienced creates wounds. And the losses create wounds.
Right, the failures, the feeling of failures. And I like that in that reading was the courage to see that you are still in the path of healing. So when I was taking that psychological wound and going, all right, so the path of healing in a trauma, in a mental and emotional state would be the courage to see that you're not stuck, you're not stagnant in that injury, in that accident, in that place of being let go, fired, having the news, hearing the news, receiving that you have to change where you live maybe or something, or a loss of a pet. It's what's after. It's the after, the path of healing. It is
the path of healing. Yeah. Oh, and the one time I was fired from my job, it was the best thing that ever happened. And I decided it was going to be that. I decided that I wasn't going to be a victim. I didn't know what it meant to not be a victim, but I said, I'm not going to be a victim about this. I had just started my psychotherapy practice. They didn't like that it was down the street from where I was working, so they fired me. And so then I put all the energy into my practice, and it just blossomed. So.
Oh, see, that's turning the wound around. So how about we do that? We'll go off to commercial break, but when we come back, let's talk about turning the wound around. I love that you said it flourished. It's beautiful. All right. Access to Angels and Grace. We got access coming to you.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Being a radio host on IOM-FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Consistently attract soulmate clients, begin showing up on brand, monetizing on your calling. Welcome all spiritual coaches, leaders, healers, light workers, and practitioners to a show that turns you on in your business and amplifies your magnetism. I'm host, catalyst, and spiritual business coach Rosalind Fung, and I'm here to journey with you into the juicy and help you discover where the real gaps are. Ignite your mindset and soul with strategies and systems as each episode takes you to the sweet spot that activates your soulgasmic business by tuning in on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Mountain. Join me for your light language activation, and let's magnetize and monetize.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week, she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
And here we go, access away. Now, Noemi, I'd like to take this opportunity first before we jump in, is that everybody, guess what? We have exciting invitation for you in 30 minutes, actually, coming up here. So 12:15 Eastern Time. That's in about 35 minutes or so. I'm going to be having Noemi Grace as my guest. I'm going to be interviewing her. Not like this is the show. We're doing the show. We have our theme and we talk about it. But Noemi, I've invited you to be a guest. I wanted to interview you, showcase you, but get deeper in behind. Why does Noemi do what she does? How does she channel? Why does she channel? What do you all like? I wanted people to really get to know you and how you work, with how you have these chats with Source and Universal. You know, what goes on. And as a writer, because you're a beautiful author, you write just amazingly, and how you have that relationship with Source. So inviting everybody to tune into my Facebook page. That's Lisa Berry, Berry, at 12:15 Eastern. And we are going to go live. I'm going to stream and have a fun little 20-minute chat with Noemi and see how her life is with Source.
Which is lovely. I have no idea what you're going to ask, but yeah, hanging out with you as always, and the divine. I mean, to me, that's good stuff, you know. So yeah, tune in if you can. No idea what will show up, but it will be good.
It will be good. And you know, too, I just want to share this. So sometimes, you know, we love radio. We love popping on here and getting to share our voice with everybody. But it does offer a different dimension when you can see people. And that way you can comment. You can, you know, we'll see what questions do come up. Or, you know, it just gives, sometimes it's like going to a concert. You know, you're listening to somebody on a CD, you know, back in the day, or a cassette tape. And then you finally get to meet them or see them. You're like, ah! You're my star.
Oh, gosh.
But that's going to be, very fun. So, so tune in, everybody, 12:15. We'll say it again just before we wrap up the show today here, but I think it's going to be a wonderful time. So we'll get back into this wound. And I got so excited that I was like, oh my gosh, I was so excited to come back and talk about it. I can't remember what I said. We'd come back to.
You said turn the wound around. And so,
turn the wound around.
Exactly. Oh my God. I was just going to say that. I was just hearing. Turn the beat around. That music was going in my head.
And that's exactly what we're doing. We're turning the beat. Yes. We're changing the tune. We're changing the beat.
Turn the beat. Well, turn the wound around. Let's see. Instead of love to hear percussion, love to heal those wounds or whatever.
We'll rewrite it, everybody. And appearing next on our show, our single release.
No, definitely not.
No,
I'm a no to that one.
Okay.
My voice, you know, I've been working on my voice and recovering my voice, but to sing in public, I will do that if everyone else is singing.
Actually, you know what, Noemi? You are, well, I should share that on the Facebook Live, but I will share it to everybody. But Noemi is very into drums and percussions and stuff, so we'll do that on the interview. But this is exactly what we're trying to do is change the beat. You know, it's like how to turn the wound around. So I'm going to let you speak to that. Maybe Source has something to say.
Oh, it's not a maybe.
Oh, all right.
Okay, let me just grab a swig of water. I always seem to omit doing that on the commercial.
Okay, and as you swig, I'll share this. You know, I have been really practicing turning. I think I've been in full-blown practicing turning the wound around for the last, I would say, three weeks. Yeah, and you guys, it's magical. There's a very personal power that comes over you. It just puts you back in the driver's seat, and you don't feel helpless. You don't feel angry. You don't feel sad. Even if it's just a tiny switch, it starts, and you get. You know, I'm really happy about it. I'm really enjoying turning the wound around. So I'll let you take it there.
So any pearls from your experience before we go check in with the divine?
Okay, yes, a huge one.
I know. I feel pearls.
The biggest pearl, the shiniest pearl, and pearl's actually coming back into style, everybody, is that I am not my wound, and neither are you.
Yay, I love it. That's such a great pearl. Pearls of wisdom, you know, but they're pearls of wisdom. You don't hear diamonds of wisdom, but why not?
That's right.
So how to turn the wound around. Love it. Okay. So another couple seconds and we'll be off. Hello, Divine. One of the things I appreciate is that you give practical tips. And so this question here, how to turn the wound around. I think we tipped something on its head in one show, but how do we turn it around? And so it's not so all pervasive, encompassing. You know, what do we need to do? I think you started to address that. So, looking for more pearls. And pearls are here. There are many pearls. And we will share briefly about this with you at this time, although we have much more to say. And so, the consciousness, you see, consciousness is responsible. A shift in consciousness is responsible for everything from your individual wounds to your collective wounds. The collective wounds of humanity are so many. And if you look at the global scale and you see what's going on in different countries, the wounds, the individual wounds, and the collective wounds are on display. They are on display. People are acting out of their wounds. They're responding from their wounds. They're protecting their wounds. And each one of you, if you can have the courage, and you can, to stop that protective process. As long as you're protecting that wound and treating it so delicately, you will not be able to be free of it, because you are tending to it as if you would tend to a garden that you want to have growing all kinds of beautiful vegetables and flowers and gifts of delight. And yet tending to the wound like that will not create gifts of delight for you. It will create more of the same. It will create an awareness of greater wounding, so that even if you are not more wounded, your awareness is that of more wounded, because you become more and more wounded because of your awareness, because of your focus, because of your emphasis on the wound and tending to the wound. So, if you tended to the wound in a different way, by tending to your hearts, by tending to your healing, and grow fruits and vegetables and flowers that will nurture you and nourish you and bring you joy and beauty. And so it is important to recognize the wound. Some of you like to sweep it under the rug. Some of you like to avoid it, diminish it, pretend it doesn't exist. And that guarantees that you're dragging the wound around with you. Recognize the wound. Sit with the wound and see it for what it is. It is a protective mechanism. It is protection. And letting it know that you want to expand beyond its protection. You want to expand so that you don't need it anymore. And that you are a partnership. You are stepping into a partnership of healing. Allowing the wound to heal, but also allowing that protection in the moment. And so, as the healing increases, the protection decreases. The need for protection decreases. Although many times, as in Noemi Grace's example about her tooth, her crown, and many times the protection increases and the healing increases and the protection increases. They both increase. They both stay. Healing is happening. Protection is not recognized as no longer needed. And in that protection, you limit yourself. As we said, that protection is fortifications. It is walls around you that limit you. And they don't let out your beautiful light and the beautiful essence of who you are. And your voice cannot be heard clearly on the other side of the wall. So focus on the healing rather than the wounding. Focus on freeing rather than being a survivor or a victim or in some way limited. Focus on it is safe rather than it is unsafe, because the wound tells you it is unsafe, and that's why there's the protection. And it was unsafe at one time, but it is no longer unsafe. But you act as if it is unsafe, and that limits you. So become willing to pull down those walls, asking for our help, asking for help from others, healers that can help you. Start to focus on healing. So many of you who have been wounded, and our hearts go out to you, those who have been greatly wounded. Your lives are organized around the wound, and you cannot free yourself, and you cannot even be yourself while you are consumed with the wound and while the wound consumes you. So begin the willingness to dismantle all those fortifications. And when you do, and you see what the wound is really, you will see that it's so much more healed than you realized. But the fortifications are keeping you, the protections are keeping you limited, and your voice cannot be heard, and your beautiful light is diminished. And we want to see you all shining your light, because each one of you has a bright light. We have so much more to say about this, and yet we are aware of time, even though we live in timelessness. We are complete. Namaste. Oh, I love it. 2 times, and they left space. Thank you, Divine. Thank you.
They left space. I have to highlight the word came up a few times. Both I think from Source and maybe from you too, but fortifications. And what it made me think about was a cast. So when we break a bone, we have a cast on there to fortify, first of all, build a wall around it and then help it to strengthen. And we all know you don't have the cast for life, right? It gets cut off. And then you get to go to a nice little, a soft cast, they call it, and then a little tensor bandage. And then we work the muscles around it and we have support. And so that really showed up with as you were saying that. And so I kind of wrote down that our lives are organized around the wound, and then it can consume us, and we must dismantle the fortification, the cast, at some point. And that's the question I think we're trying to get everybody to ask themselves. Where have they been accommodating for the wound? Where have they put the cast on? And hey, that needs to come off. It's time to go, perhaps.
Yeah, and the impression, and I had an image of something, but I can't recall it. If it doesn't come out of my mouth and it pops into my awareness, it doesn't necessarily stay. But that image of taking down the walls and finding out that the wound is actually not so wounded, that it has had some healing, which we can't be aware of when we have walls all around it.
Right. Ooh, the surprise in the healing. Going, look at you. You're so much better.
Yeah. And what you focus on really does get bigger in your experience. And so when we focus on the trauma, and of course we have to heal it, but when it becomes like this, as I said, organizing principle of your life, that you survive the trauma, that's where you're at. That is where your awareness is, that is where your experience is. And so if your awareness is at, I am healing from every wound that has happened. I am healing from everything. And that's where your awareness is. And that's where your experience is.
Yes.
Ooh, and where your awareness is, your experience is. Ooh, I like that.
Ooh, yes, write that down. And the fun thing, too, is that I love it. The wound really is, just remember, everybody, it's the trauma and once you made it through, this is one of my favorite lines that I used to always say growing up. I'm still alive. Look at that. I made it through. All right. So there we go. That's the hard part's done. Don't get stuck in the aftermath. And actually, this is one of my biggest things. I'm going to squeeze this in really fast because we still have 3 minutes. My best friend's house burnt down. And I know that's traumatizing. Yes, absolutely. That's a
big
wound.
Trauma.
Big trauma. And there's a processing element to this. But I remember going to her, it had been a year, and she was still telling the story every time she met somebody new. Well, my house burned down. I lost everything. And I was like, do you know, I said that you're actually rewounding yourself. And I said, I know it happened. It's not that it didn't happen, but you don't need to tell everybody that story over and over because you're creating it. So I just wanted to share that because there are some big things that we do, they're wounds, they're traumas. But tell a different story. Hear the story of the healing. Listen to that conch shell?
Conch shell.
Conch shell that you spoke of earlier, and allow it to tell the story, the full story, the healing story. So listen to the new story. I think that's where I feel like this episode has shown us.
Yeah, I love that metaphor that tells you about its life in the ocean when you listen. And that if you listen to the wound, it will tell you. But it'll tell you about you and your life and how you're limiting yourself. And so taking away that fear. We attach so much fear to the wound to realize with the wound wants healing. And with the wound is the potential for healing. And so can we start to embrace that a little bit and take our emphasis off of the wound? I used to work with victims of domestic violence, and they were always, I'm a survivor. They would play the music, and I'm like, that's still tying you to what is. What happened? Yes. I mean, not what is. What is like today you can create an opportunity for something else because you're not there anymore. You're not in that unsafe place. And so we become like that person. I'm a survivor of this, when we could be healed from it and we could be thriving. And that opportunity is available to us.
Oh,
and
I
so,
love that.
Yes.
Create the opportunity for healing, everybody. That's what we're leaving you with, as well as the invitation to join us in just 15 minutes over on the Facebook page of Lisa Berry, Berry, because we're going to have a little chat with Noemi Grace. I can't wait. Noemi.
Me neither. Thank you for listening.
We'll see you guys soon. Okay, bye everyone. Until 2 weeks from now on here on OMTimes Radio, Access to Angels and Grace. Bye, Noemi.
Bye, Lisa. See you soon.
Bye.